Hey, what's up, you guys? So, this video today is for people who have ever found themselves saying, I hate myself, I hate my life, I hate everyone, I hate everything, and every combination therein. Hopefully, if I do my job well, I will help some of you start to break that cycle. And I am speaking as somebody who spent so many years of my life just feeling extremely insecure and feeling like I really, really hated myself. And I say feeling like very intentionally because many of the ways that I felt about myself and like when I would think, oh, I really hate myself, I hate my life, etc. Once I started breaking a lot of these patterns, I arrived at these different mind states where I was like, oh my God, I actually really like certain aspects of myself and I actually like certain aspects of my life. And it started out as like, oh, I like certain things, it starts small. And then I eventually graduated into loving a lot more things. And the more things that you start to really like and love about your life, it just only expands more and more. Okay, so let's get into the actual video now. First, where I really want to start is why you believe that you hate your life, why you believe that you hate yourself. There are so many different factors in this life that make us feel bad about ourselves, and it can be really hard to break those cycles because at the end of the day, we are all a part of these systems, and we need people in our lives to show us that there's another way. And if we don't have people showing us that, then how are we supposed to know? So, the first thing that I want to run through is that you are stuck in a pattern. You are stuck in a pattern of thought right now that is keeping you in this loop. When you are in a pattern of, saying things like, oh, I hate myself, I hate my life, I hate everything, then how else are you going to believe anything else? Our brains very naturally think in patterns. We pick up on patterns very easily. So in your brain, if you're in a pattern of thinking really negative thoughts about yourself, about other people, about the world at large, then you're only really going to keep seeing evidence of that and keep feeling like it all sucks and everything's bad and you're bad. And one of your tasks is to start breaking this pattern. Your inner critic has gotten really, really good at its job. It does it so, so well. And the reason you know it's doing so well is because you're feeling like crap. So I'm going to talk about how to do this a little later in the video, but it is your task to start breaking this pattern, interrupting this pattern of your inner critic that always has something negative to say. Another reason that you think that you do not like yourself is because you are comparing yourself to other people. At the end of the day, even though there are billions of us on this earth, none of us have exactly the same lives or exactly the same thoughts. So, because of that, we really can't compare ourselves to other people because we just have like no idea really what is going on in other people's brains and bodies and minds. And we're all on our own journey. You can't compare your journey to somebody else's because they're different. They're just always going to be different. Another big picture in this whole collage is that you're really self focused. You're hyper aware of what your body is doing all the time. You're hyper aware of how you look all the time, how you sound to other people. And because you're so self focused, you get into this mindset where you believe that everybody thinks the same negative things about you that you think. But that's not true. What's really happening here is that you're stuck in a pattern of this self focus and nitpicking everything about yourself that honestly, like, nobody else really sees but you. And the last thing I will talk about is that you are stuck in a story and it's time to rewrite it. And, I can totally imagine how you're feeling right now because I felt these ways so many times. Like when I first heard somebody suggest to me that, I had some responsibility in how I felt about myself and that I could change things. Initially it's kind of like, well, what the hell? Like, you don't know me, you don't know my life, you don't know my story. But here's the thing. Those people ended up being right. And obviously there was a reason why I felt so triggered by some of that advice, because when you learn that you can change your story, you can change the way that you feel about yourself, then you realize that you actually have some power over this and you can make these changes. You just got to be brave enough to do it. And here's the thing. Here's one thing I know about every single person watching this video right now is that you love yourself. And you can dispute it all you want, but here's how I know that you do. The reason I know that you love yourself is because You're watching this video right now. And I think watching a video like this or similar ones like this, that just proves how much you love yourself, because even if you don't totally believe it yet, there is something deep inside you that knows that another way of life is possible, and you want to search for it. If you really didn't believe that none of this was possible, you wouldn't be here right now. You wouldn't be searching things like this or looking up similar stuff like this. Like, I would say that the act of trying and the act of having hope for another future just proves how much you love and care about yourself. There's something in you that knows that deep down there is another way. And if there is another way, you want to find out what that is. Another reason I know that you love yourself is because I truly believe that all of us are made of love. We all came to this planet as fully loving beings. You know, when we were little babies, we weren't thinking about how we were inadequate or how we could be better or how we weren't enough. We didn't think any of that because we were babies. And as babies, the thing that you need in order to live and survive is love. And before we sort of ingested so much toxicity of the culture that tells us that we're not good enough and that we need to be different or change ourselves or that there's something fundamentally broken inside of us, before we learn any of that, we're just vibing. We're just living life. We're observing, we're feeling, we're hearing, we're thinking. And I really feel like when you remove all of the, societal conditioning, all the fears, all the anxieties, all of the things that are really weighing you down in life, who are you without all those things? And I believe that without all those things, you're love. You're love. Okay, so now on to definitely, arguably, the most important part of this video is to go through some of the micro steps that you can take to start loving yourself just a little bit more every single day. Because one thing that I definitely want to stress to everybody watching is that this is a process. And it is something that, you'll take micro steps in doing every single day. And it does lead to really big changes over time. But in the beginning, it's slow, it's frustrating. And I'm not going to sugarcoat that because it is. But then eventually, once you do it enough, it becomes that new pattern. And instead of being in that negative thought pattern that you were in before of like hating everything and that just being your like default reaction, you're going to start interrupting some of that and saying, wait a minute, let me take a pause. Do I hate everything right now? So, okay, let's get into it. So, one of the biggest things that will affect your journey into loving yourself a little bit more is by teaching yourself how to speak to yourself with kindness. And that's super, super hard if you are not used to it. I mean, growing up, up until like not even that long ago in my life, like a couple years ago, like my default all the time was just to speak to myself from a place of criticism and judgment. And I was definitely the harshest person on myself than anyone else. I always felt like I deserved to be judged and criticized and shamed and all those things. So at a certain point, your brain does this little flips the switch where you're like, okay, well, if everyone else is going to do that, then I might as well beat everybody to the punch and do it myself. Obviously, that created a lot of unhappiness. Start really paying attention to the ways that you speak to yourself. What that requires is taking a pause more often when you're, in your thoughts and actually taking the time to examine if the things that you're saying to yourself are actually true. So, for example, if you are trying to teach yourself something new and it's not coming super easily, and your first thought is, I'm so bad at this, I'm never going to be good at this because I'm insert negative thing you're going to say about yourself. And when you're in that moment, if you can notice it happening, pause right there and say, wait a minute, is this true? Is it true that I am this negative thing that I'm telling myself I am because I'm struggling with this? And here's the thing, you're not. You're literally not. I think what's really helpful in those moments when you are pausing is to tell yourself that your feelings and reactions make sense. So, in that example, you're trying something new and you are struggling with it, instead of telling yourself that, I don't know, maybe you don't get things very quickly or you're dumb or whatever, that's not true. We're erasing that. What we can actually say in that situation is, you know, it makes sense that I'm feeling frustrated with this right now because I'm doing something new. I'm doing something I haven't done before. It makes sense that I'm not getting this immediately. And you know what? Maybe other people would get this immediately, but I'm not other people. I'm me. And maybe I need a little extra time in order to get this or understand this a little better. And this is not a reflection on who I am or my intelligence or anything like that. Now, of course, I'm making this sound like this is super easy to do, and obviously it's not. But if you can start getting yourself in the practice of noticing the feelings, taking a moment, a pause to question them, and then taking that extra step to tell yourself that your feelings make sense, that's huge. That's already an enormous thing to do. And if you take nothing else away from this video but this point, that will still help your life so much. Another micro step that you can take is to get to neutral. So it's really, really hard for your brain to hop to extremes. Got a little burp. So what that means, it's just too dramatic to shift from I hate myself to I love myself. Like to your brain that is so used to being in criticism mode and shame mode, your brain's like, what the hell? Like, how am I supposed to leap from I hate myself to I love myself? That seems like such a huge leap. How am I supposed to get there? That sounds impossible. And it sounds that way because it's just a really big leap. And what you really need to do is just take much smaller leaps. So, what you really need to be doing is not leaping from I hate myself to I love myself, but to leap from the hate to a neutral space. Because once you get to the neutral space, then you can work towards more of like the I love myself. But first, you got to get to that neutral place. And that neutral place is not I hate myself, but maybe it's like, you know what? I'm kind of maybe okay with myself. And even if you're saying it like that, if it sounds like it's not, the point is that it's not like an extreme negative or an extreme positive. It's somewhere in the middle where maybe you can't totally believe or agree yet that you love yourself or like yourself. And that's okay. That's okay if you can't immediately get there. But if you can get to a place of like, all right, I'm okay, perhaps, that's already a sign of improvement. So, as best as you can, try to get to that neutral place because once you get to the neutral place, then from that stable ground, you can more so leap to the I like myself, I love myself, etc. I talked about this a little bit before, but please, 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 as best as you can, stop comparing yourself to other people and their progress and their journey. And I would caveat this saying, I think the only time it's okay to compare yourself to others is if you're really inspired by them. And maybe you want to adopt something that they do because you think it's really great and you like that quality of theirs. I think that that is healthy comparison. But the unhealthy comparison that I am talking about is when you look at other people and then you use them as evidence that you are not good enough. You're not where you're supposed to be. You're never going to be as good as them, that kind of stuff. Because, like I said before, no two people are the same. No two people's journeys are the same. And therefore, it's almost like a little absurd to compare yourself to other people because the way that you have both existed in this world is never going to be completely the same. Like, even if you're just thinking about your sibling, somebody that you literally grew up in the same household as, you're still different. You've still had different experiences and different formative moments of your lives. So it just doesn't really make sense to compare ourselves to others, and also it makes us feel like crap. So, as best you can, when you notice that sort of toxic comparison happening, do your best to like before, pause, notice it and say, "Okay, why am I comparing myself to this person?" And also examine the comparisons a little bit because sometimes they actually can be helpful And at times they can evolve into healthy comparison. Because, I mean, for myself, I can think of plenty of times in my life, I still experience this all the time, honestly, where there have been certain people where I have looked at them and compared myself to them and either felt, sad about it because I want what they have, or I have felt kind of resentful because I have an envy or jealousy towards them and I want what they have. And when I've noticed sometimes that it is coming from a place of envy, then I'm like, oop, clocked that. If I'm envious, that means that they are exhibiting something right now that I admire or want. And then I can then make that shift into like, oh, wait a minute. I don't resent this person. I'm actually inspired by them. They actually have certain qualities that I think are kind of cool. And like, instead of feeling like their existence is proof that I'm not good enough, what I can really do is look at their existence as proof that I can have a life like that too. So, I mean, isn't that great and grand? I love that. It's the beautiful alchemy of life. Another more practical way to shift from the hate to the love is to release your energy. You need to release your energy regularly. And what I mean by that is journaling, it's breath work, it's exercising, it's dancing, it's screaming into a bowl of ice water. It's any way that is comfortable for you, a release for you to let go of like the dark energy inside of you. Because if you're not doing any sort of practice to release the dark energy, it's just going to keep building up. It's just going to keep building up. And I mean, I think we've all like heard of the book and like the phrase that now people say, the body keeps the score. It really does. When you are not releasing any of that negative energy, it's just staying in your body and it's influencing the ways that you exist in this world. This is also something I mentioned before, but let go of the story. What is the story that you're telling yourself? Who do you think you are? And I would say a good exercise to do for this is to write down just who you think you are and what you think your life is and what stories you've been telling yourself about why you are the way that you are and why your life is the way that it is. And then once you do that, I want you to write down what you want your life to be and what you want to define you. And then at that point, you already have a framework where your imagination is doing all the work. Your imagination already knows where it wants to be and how it wants to act and present in this world. So once you have all of that really clear to yourself, then you can start existing in that way. And obviously, this is another thing, go slow. It'll take time. But in the ways that you are walking through this world and the ways that you make decisions, you can then start to think about that dream self, that hopeful self, and think, okay, what would that person do in this scenario? Like, think about this person as your future self, where they are already existing inside of you. They're already there. They are so excited to come out, and you are the person that's going to bring them out. But in order to do that, you have to make those small decisions every single day and make the kinds of decisions that they would make. Setting boundaries is also huge. And I know that boundaries is a thing that, especially if you never learned how to set boundaries, super, super hard to do. This is something that I still struggle with. Um, but a great way to start is to start deciphering in your body what a no and a yes feels like. Because if you're finding yourself very often saying yes to things that you actually want to say no to, that's adding more of that negative energy. You are building up more of that negative energy where you're like, ugh, I'm doing all these things that I don't want to do and it sucks. And here's the thing, like, it's time to interrogate some of that stuff. Like, yes, there are definitely things in this life that, sometimes we have to do things we don't want to do, and that sucks and whatever, it's part of life. But I also think that there are so many, especially when you have like learned to overgive and always say yes to everything, there are definitely things in your life that you maybe think that you can't say no to, but you can. And that's kind of your task to start examining all of the things that you say yes to when you don't want to say yes. And think about like, is this something that I really have to do? And if it isn't, then how can I go about this in a way that will make me feel a little bit better? Because the other thing too is When you start having firmer boundaries around what you say yes to and what you say no to, you start to feel a lot better about your life just naturally, because you're not carrying around all of this rage and resentment over doing things that you don't want to do. Because when you start dropping those things, you also start to feel like you have more power and control in your life. Having healthy boundaries is very empowering. And the last thing I will say is just try your best. That's it. Just try your best. Trying to be perfect at any of this is not going to be sustainable, and perfect is the enemy of good. We know this. The main thing that you need to be looking at is just incremental progress. So every day, as best as you can, try to be a little kinder to yourself, try to be a little more patient with yourself. Start to ask yourself what your future self would do and what they would want you to do. Release the energy, and yeah, just do your best. I hope that this video was helpful. I really want to make way more videos like this, and I hope that it finds the people that it's meant to help. Because I really do want to build a kind of community on here, and like I think YouTube is such a beautiful place to do that. So yeah, I will see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.